It was around 1984. A friend of my mother invited us to take this little road trip to this little town called Solvang in California, guaranteeing that we would have a great time, us kids anyway. So, early Saturday morning, we piled into this lady's car and headed north from El Cajon, California. I think I slept most of the way there while my sister obsessed over her Teen Beat magazines or whatever she was reading at the time. And we didn't really see much of this town when we got there. We visited maybe 3 or 4 shops and had only been there about 45 minutes before my mother's friend decided that we needed to leave to make this unplanned visit to her grandmother that lived in Santa Barbara, not too far away. So, we piled back into this lady's car and left. And not too much longer later, the passage of time for kids can be excruciating, but we arrive at this dilapidated Victorian farmhouse, and this is the type of place that would scream evil haunted house to any kid, much less, my 10-year-old self at the time. We were welcomed inside by this old lady, and she was in her 90s, and the inside of this place smelled like a combination of mothballs, pee, and lots of dust, and everything was really old and just creepy. And I was told in a stern voice by my mother to touch nothing. And on the other side of that, you have my mother's friend pushing us to go explore what remained of this farm out back. And that just kind of consisted of some chickens, a bunch of overgrown weeds, a couple sad goats, a barn that was about to fall over, and this windmill that didn't work. It was while I was back there that I heard this commotion in the house, and it started with this sort of high-pitched screeching, and it sent chills down my spine, and I was about to go back inside to find out what was going on when my sister came out the back door and told me that the old lady had flipped out or something. So my sister and I were sat down in front of this ancient black and white TV in the living room, and this thing only got 2 channels. Well, my mother and her friend were going to get some food and use the phone somewhere since this old house had no working phone in it. I heard my mom's friend mention stopping for drinks too, but when I asked about this, my mother assured me that they would be back soon. So they left. We're watching TV, and the old lady reappears and sits down next to my sister. And a couple hours go by, we're watching these TV shows, and next thing I know, it's around 10 p.m., and we're down to 1 channel, and it's showing the 1923 version of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which, to me was extremely creepy and just added to the overall creepy ambience of the whole situation. But for some reason, this movie made this old lady laugh hysterically, and that really didn't help. But my sister got bored with this, and she's kind of an oblivious person, always has been. She grabbed her stack of magazines and disappeared up to that kid's room, I guess. As for me, I was determined to stay up until my mother got back because I was very angry and I was going to give her a piece of my mind. So about 30 minutes after my sister disappeared, it got really quiet. And I turned and looked at the old lady, and she was sitting there with her face clenched up and her eyes wide open. And it just looked really weird. I turned back to the TV real quick and pretended I hadn't seen her. But, curiosity getting the best of me, I turned back and took another look. And as I did, this high-pitched scream just erupted from her mouth. And I was so startled by this, I jumped back. I had no idea what to do. But I ended up running to the kitchen and opening that back door, intending to run out there. But as soon as I open the door, I see this dilapidated barn in the dark with all these red eyes staring at me. And I slammed the door back and turned around to go the other way. But that old lady was now blocking the entryway into the kitchen between myself and the front door. And her face is still, twisted up in this exaggerated grimace, I guess. And her eyes are wide, and she lets out another one of those high-pitched screams. So I'm backing up. I hit the door, and she's coming forward, and I make my break for it to try to get around her, and I do get around her, and I head up to that room and find my sister, and I'm trying to wake her up. She's asleep on the bed, and she's, just kind of drooling on one of these magazines, and I'm pushing on her, trying to get her to get up, and she just kind of rolled over and let out a massive fart and didn't wake up. I went to the doorway and looked down the hall, and the old lady was standing at the top of the staircase holding this big pie knife, like she was going to stab someone, like up over her head, like she was about to stab someone. So I went back to trying to wake my sister up. She wouldn't wake up at all. No luck there. So suddenly I hear that high-pitched screeching again, and I turn around, and that old lady's right at that door. So I jump up and I slam the door shut, and I managed to get a chair under the doorknob, a trick I'd seen in movies before. And what followed was an hour straight of this old lady screaming and pounding on that door, my sister not waking up, and those weird screams coming out of this lady's mouth. My sister didn't budge the whole time, just nothing, no response, anything. So by the time I hear my mother and her friend return, it's really, really late, probably, around 2:30 in the morning. And I hear my mother's friend say something and race up the stairs like boom, 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 really, really fast. And I hear a bunch of whispering, and she ushers her grandmother, away from the door to where, I don't know. And then I heard my mom calling us, and I opened up the door, and my mother walked up the stairs and had obviously been drinking, so I'm trying to tell her what happened, but she wasn't really interested. She just kind of pushed my sister over and laid down and passed out. And, I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Instead, I'm watching all these shadows creeping around out that doorway. And by morning, everybody pretended that nothing had happened. And it was a very strange trip, and one I will never forget. It was also my first introduction to Solvang.